Good evening and thank you for joining us tonight for KREM 2 News 10 at 10, where we give you more news in less time. I'm Cody Proctor. Let's get started with new tonight. Days after the Department of Health suspended their license, Daybreak Youth Services remains open and has no plans on closing their Spokane facility. New at 10, KREM 2's Kyle Simchuk looks into the complaint and why Daybreak says the state's playing dirty tricks. Kyle.
Well, yeah, Cody, the Department of Health says Daybreak failed to cooperate with investigations into patient safety, including sexual misconduct. Daybreak claims those concerns have already been addressed, and by pulling their license, the state's actually putting young people at risk.
Daybreak Youth Services provides treatment for teens struggling with addiction and mental health. According to their website, the nonprofit's the largest youth Medicaid facility in the state and one of the few providing inpatient treatment. Daybreak has two locations, one in Spokane, the other in Brush Prairie. This week, both facilities lost their licenses, yet both locations remain open despite a temporary court order. Daybreak's accusing the Department of Health of using dirty tricks and denying them due process. The Department of Health says Daybreak repeatedly failed to cooperate with DOH investigations into ongoing patient safety concerns, failed to make mandatory reports, and failed to respond appropriately to allegations of staff misconduct, all of which are required by law. Earlier this year, a female counselor was charged with having sex with a minor male patient at the Brush Prairie facility and possibly a hotel room, according to court documents obtained by KREM 2. The Department of Health conducted more than 700 facilities investigations in 2022. They claim Daybreak was the only facility that refused to cooperate with the investigation. On the other hand, Daybreak claims that while under oath, the department's lead investigator said she didn't have any evidence of non-cooperation, that it was only a, quote, feeling. The state says Daybreak continues to demonstrate disregard for the law. In a statement, Department of Health Chief of Prevention Lacey Fehrenbach said in part their refusal to cooperate with DOH investigations into serious allegations and now their refusal to comply with the lawful suspension orders of two separate health law judges are evidence Daybreak believes it can operate outside of the law. End quote. Caught in the middle of this legal fight are some of Washington's most vulnerable teens. Daybreak says their staff do not pose an immediate threat to patients, but the Department of Health does. The nonprofit says if they shut down, the kids they serve are likely to, quote, end up on the street, in jail, or the morgue.
Now, since their license is suspended, Apple Health or Medicaid cannot pay for services and Daybreak cannot bill them. We'll continue to follow this story as it plays out. In the studio, Kyle Simchuk, KREM 2 News.
Kyle, thank you so much. Let's move on now to Nightbeat for a quick look at the day's top stories. Spokane police identified the remains of a body found over 40 years ago. Back in January of 1980, 3 people walking along the railroad found a man's burned remains. His death was ruled a homicide, but authorities had no way to identify him, and no one matching his description was ever reported missing. Now, 43 years later, thanks to the genetic lab Othram, they know who he is. Donald Leroy Pearson. Originally from the Midwest, police say he was 54 years old when he died. They're still working to find out exactly who killed him. This is the second body this year Spokane police managed to identify through genetic genealogy. Well, have you seen this man? Wenatchee police are asking for help tonight in finding 38-year-old Travis Coleman. A family member reported him missing in April. Investigators believe Coleman may be suffering from some sort of mental illness and may not be able to take care of himself or find his way home. Coleman was last seen at his house on the 1200 block of Montana Street in Wenatchee. There have been several reported sightings of him in the Wenatchee Valley area, specifically Kashmir. None have been confirmed. He weighs about 180 pounds and stands about 5 feet 10 inches tall. He also has a tattoo of boxing gloves on his right upper chest and a Fox Racing symbol on his left wrist. Anyone with info about his whereabouts is asked to contact Rivercom Dispatch at 509-663-9911. Kellogg High School's graduation ceremony has now been postponed. That's after several students walked out today in protest of a disciplinary decision for one of the seniors. Administrators say he made unapproved comments about gender. In a Facebook post, the district said, quote, the Shoshone County Sheriff's Office has informed the Kellogg School District of concerns regarding the safety of students, staff, and families due to a number of outside groups and agitators. Superintendent Lance Pearson told KREM 2 News it was never about the students' political stance, but because he went off script. Pearson says the students who walked out today will be marked as absent with no excuse. According to Pearson, there's no word yet on when the graduation ceremony will take place. The Kootenai County Sheriff's Office is preparing to do more with less this summer. Their Marine division's right in the middle of a staffing shortage. The Marine unit patrols 18 lakes and 56 miles of waterway. 3 teams will watch the shores and open waters of Lake Coeur d'Alene and the Spokane River. A roving team will then hit other busy spots such as Hayden Lake. That's about half the optimal staffing. Former Marine deputies from the jail or patrol will cover overtime shifts. The unit sees about 5,000 violations every season, but only handed out citations to about 7% of the time last year. And that was your Night Beat. To learn more about any of these stories, just text the word night to 509-448-2000. We'll send them right to your phone. Well, it's Friday night, and with weekend plans comes weekend planning. Meteorologist Michelle Boss in the Weather Center tonight with how the forecast will play into that.
It's going to be very different than last weekend, where some folks had to contend with some very stormy weather, some very wet weather. It looks like this weekend is going to be a lot drier, and there's going to be plenty of sunshine around and warm temperatures. Let's take a look at satellite and radar right now, where it's been pretty active just east of the Rockies, and you can see that activity, some of it moving westward, but it's pretty much dissipating. All the energy is east of the Rockies, so we don't expect any storm activity in eastern Washington, or at least North Idaho, west of the Rockies through this weekend. We've got clear skies all across central Washington. Currently, temperatures are in the 60s and 70s, 68 in Spokane, 64 in Coeur d'Alene. Deer Park, one of the cooler spots, sitting at 57 degrees and still holding on to the 70s in Wenatchee, Moses Lake, and Lewiston. Next 12 hours shows pretty quiet conditions, clear skies tonight, temperatures down in the low to mid 50s as we start off our day on Saturday, and then warming up quickly. We will see highs in the lower 80s on Saturday and a lot more sunshine on the way for Sunday with highs in the mid 80s.
WSU's athletic department is getting ready for a multi-million-dollar budget shortfall. The projections went public about 2 weeks ago, but today we found out just how much of a deficit there really is and why. Sports Director Travis Green joining us in the studio tonight now to break it all down for us tonight.
Yeah, Cody, on May 22nd, we found out about Washington State's athletic department financial troubles after University President Kirk Schultz addressed the issue with a release to the university. Today, we found out the actual number of that deficit. The athletics department is $11.5 million short of what the budget anticipated. With a number like that, it's never just one thing, and that's the case here. The main aspect that has really hurt WSU's budget is decreased revenue. There is a $3.5 million decrease from the Pac-12 conference revenue distribution. On top of the $3.5 million reduction, a forecasted $1.4 million shortfall in the conference and NCAA distributions. There was also a $1.3 million decline in various student fees, income due to decreased enrollment. But the department also overspent the expected budget this past season by $5.5 million, $300,000 of which was spent on student wages, overtime pay, and an increase in pay to contractual employees. Financial aid was $400,000 over budget due to larger than anticipated medical and degree completion aid. And the big one being $4.8 million was overspent on team expenses, which includes travel, recruiting, meals, everything a team needs. Athletic Director Pat Chun addressed the deficit this afternoon.
We're going to have to, make some tough decisions this year. It's no different than most years. The nice thing for us is, getting through this year also marks, what essentially be the beginning of a new TV deal in FY25. New CFP expansion also impacts us positively. So it's going to be a tough year. Our staff is prepared to do that.
Chun also said it should not affect current student athletes and that there is no consideration of cutting any sports. That's something WSU fans were pretty worried about when they first saw this. Chun called this past year an aberration and said they'll have to work hard to hit a certain number over the next year, and then things should get back to normal. Cody?
Travis, thank you so much. And that was also your KREM 2 News 10 at 10, where you get more news in less time.